tell you a little bit about what I've been doing lately. Has been learning the DJ culture. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I even came into that, and then my friend Mark Luv here was willing to come to the class and share some of his experience of our conversation, and hopefully we're going to share a little bit. I don't really know where this will go, but I'm really excited about it because I know the conversations that I've had with Mark have been really fascinating, so I'm so excited to bring y'all in the conversation. So, maybe a little more background is you guys know that I've been involved in the urban community for a long time, and as I've come to seminary, I've really wanted to bring what I've learned in the classroom back to the urban setting. So I found lots of different ways to involve my friends in my projects. Another thing about me is that I don't know much about music. I got intimidated when I was in junior high. I think I was on a bus and some kid was like, "What music do you like?" And it was really challenging, and I got nervous. And I said some name of, I don't even know who, and I said, "Ew, you like that?" And I thought, I said the wrong thing. And so I mostly stayed out of the music conversation. I let my friends be my DJs, and they would give me mixtapes, and I never knew who I was listening to, but it was like Bobby music, or Becky music, or Jen music. Like I never sat there with the covers and thought, learned who I liked. So when I go into a music store, I was so overwhelmed because I didn't know the names of anybody that I was listening to, and so I pretty much just stayed away from that conversation. And as I got older, that became like a unique thing about me. I'd never bought a CD. I went to college and people were like, "That's kind of weird," and I thought it was like kind of unique, But as you get older, you realize that this whole music conversation is going on around you, and people tried to engage me in it, and once they realized I didn't know really anything, then they would find other conversations to talk about. So I took a class about 1.5 years ago in Old Testament. It was a writings class, and one of our assignments was to compare something in the Old Testament writings with something in contemporary culture. Music, movies, books, something like that. So what I did is I called some of my girls that I hung out with in Oakland, California, and I said, "Help me with my homework. Read Ecclesiastes and tell me if it reminds you of any rap songs." And it was a fascinating conversation because one of them said, "Well, yeah, that reminds me of Kanye West, All Falls Down." And I said, "Really, where?" And she would point out to me, and we had this fascinating conversation because she knew about the music and was intimidated by the Bible, and I knew the Bible and was intimidated by the music. So we were both, it was a really energy-filled conversation because we were both teachers and we were both learners. And it was really neat. And what I realized is that a lot of my friends in the inner city know music, and maybe sometimes are intimidated by the whole church Bible conversation. And so I thought, if I enter into the music world, I might have a little bit of an idea of what it's like when I invite them to come into my theology world. So I took theology and pop music, which was a class filled with music heads. They were making all these inside jokes the first day, and I realized, like, I don't know what we're talking about here. And so, but I took that class, and because I was thinking about it from that framework of how do these two worlds connect, I was constantly asking the question, whatever questions I'm asking to music right now, what would be the correlation to theology? So for example, I was asking my TA, what's a framework of music? What genres fit with what other genres, And so I would ask the same thing to the Bible. What's the genres of the Bible? How does it all flow together? What would be a framework to give someone so that they can kind of start looking at the smaller pieces? And as I was doing that, I started to make these connections like, well, what if the prophets are a lot like punk? Because punk is this really normal music that's saying, like, the system is not okay, and they do these crazy things to get that message across. And the prophets are doing the same thing. They're like trying to shake people up, and sometimes they do crazy things to get their message across. Or what if Esther is like a symphony? Because God is never mentioned, but it's like a conductor standing at the front, and everything is so like, and then boom, kind of like a symphony. And then I started thinking, well, what about if Revelation is like hip hop music? Because it's basically sampling from the Old Testament. You can't understand Revelation unless you're taking these little bits and pieces, and you have to understand its context, and they're putting it together. So as I was like going on that route, for those of you who don't know, hip hop DJing is very different than the radio DJ. It's not like a Ryan Seacrest who stands up front and says like, that was da da da, you know, our next song is, you know, the hip hop DJ really creatively knows their content, knows their material so well that they can mix it together and they can present it to a very specific audience and respond to very specific things that they see right in front of them. So I started to think of the pastor and the DJ having a lot in common, because the hip-hop DJ has a set of music that they know really well, inside and out, so they can mix it together and present it to their audience. And the pastor has a set of books of the Bible that they have to know really well, so they can mix it together and present it to their congregation. Kind of in this process, I found out that there was a school for DJs. I didn't know these existed. On the west side of LA, there's the LA Scratch Academy. So I called up the LA Scratch Academy and I said, I'm a grad student. Can I interview someone there? And they said, sure. And so we set up an interview with the executive director, DJ Hapa, and we sat down. And the first thing he asked me was, so what school did you say you were from? And I said, oh, the seminary, actually. And he's like, oh, what do you want to ask me? And so basically, I told him what I just told you. And I had actually just bought my first CD in October. This was like in December. Sam Cooke, you know, early soul. Christmas is so odd to the DJ. So anyway, so I sat down with DJ Hapa and I'm telling him this little prep introduction, and I get to the point where I tell him that pastors and DJs might have a lot in common, and I have no idea how he's going to receive this, right? So I say it, and I kind of like wait for the pause, he pauses, and then he says, that has to be one of the most interesting analogies I have ever heard compared to a DJ. But then he said, but that's really interesting. He's like, I might need to use that in class or something. We ended up talking for 3 hours about what our worlds could teach each other. Because I went to the Scratch Academy knowing, I think DJs are masters of knowing their content and knowing their context, and doing that balance well. And so as a pastor, I wanted to come sit at the feet of the DJs to learn what they did. And what really surprised me in my conversation with Hapa is that he was saying that what I had to offer as a pastor was also helpful to the DJs. And I was like, really? How? And he said, well, in order to be a really good DJ, you need to know yourself well. You need to look at your core self, and you need to be willing to take risks, and you need to put yourself out there. And to do that well, you need to work through your stuff. So he was kind of saying, what if you had like a guidance counselor for the DJs? And I was like, oh, this is getting a little overwhelming. I got my first CD 2 months ago. But I said, what if I come and hang out at the Scratch Academy and just see what you guys do? So I sat in on the DJ 101 class. This is all really recent. This is just back in January. There's a 6-week class, and as I come into this class, the way the Scratch Academy classes are set up is there's these 6-week classes, there's a head instructor, and then there's these TAs who, in the seminary classroom, the TA might be like, well, I don't know, TAs are different, because Mark Luv was one of the TAs in that very first DJ 101 class. And
Slash instructor,
definitely, yeah. Because Mark, it didn't take me too long to figure out that hip-hop has been around for 30 years, and Mark has been a DJ for what, 27?
Hip-hop's been around for 35, and I've been a DJ for 28. 28.
I mean, this is someone who knows some history. This is someone who, you know,
I'm old.
Has been around. Has been around. And so I think it was maybe a couple weeks into the class, Hapa wasn't there. I love sitting in this class, because if I replaced the word music with theology, it was like the best seminary class I've ever sat in. The connections they were making was just, the way they were talking about content resonated so much with what I was learning here. But I wanted to learn more, and I wanted to learn more about the history. So a few weeks in, Mark and I were sitting next to each other before the class started, and I said, you know, I hear you've been around DJing for a little bit. I think you probably have some history that you could teach me. And he's like, I know something.
Yeah, exactly.
And we started to get into a conversation right then, but then the class started up. And he's like, you know what would be really great is if we could talk right now. And there was a room in the back of the school, and so we're like, let's go. Like, let's go have this conversation.
In other words, I just ignored the class. Like, come on, let's go talk.
We totally did. And Mark can tell you a little bit about what that experience was like for him. But for me, well, and this was my impression. My impression is that you shared a little bit more with me than you had anticipated. Is that true?
Yeah, I did. I wasn't expecting on sharing that much. It started off on a hip hop lesson, and it ended up on a life lesson because I started to open up on the deeper reasons on why I got into hip hop and what hip hop has done to save my life.
Yeah.
And that's where the conversation just went completely just in a whole different realm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we were both sitting there and thinking, like, there's energy in this conversation.
Yeah.
Like, there's something that we can both learn from each other. So after this conversation, I just had a feeling, and the feeling was a funny one because I had the impression that Mark would really appreciate a book that I had read a long time ago.
The book.
And this was, if you guys have ever heard of the book Siddhartha, I think it's actually a Buddhist book that I had read a long time ago, but there was so many things in our conversation that made me think that Mark might appreciate this book. So the next time I saw him, I bought the book, and I'm like, this is kind of weird. Why am I buying a Buddhist book? But I just had the sense that I should do it. So I get on this book, I just signed the front and said, hey, thanks for having a conversation with me. And then I gave it to him, and I said, I think you might like this. You can tell them what your experience was with that.
Well, I got the book, and honestly, I was like, oh, okay, it's a cool little book. I can't pronounce the title. Okay, no problem. So, probably a book about hip-hop or something or whatever. So I took it home, and it sat there for a day or two. I didn't touch it. I was thinking, because I get a lot of stuff like books and CDs and stuff like that. So one day, I picked up the book, and hey, let me see what's going on with this book. And I read the first chapter, and then the second, and then I read the whole thing from cover to cover. And I can just sum it up like this. There's not too many things that can shock me or surprise me because I've came from, well, the city. And, and seeing the sights, the smells, the violence, the what have you in the city, nothing surprises me. Nothing really shocks me. That book touched so close to my soul, I didn't want to talk about it. And when I get that touched, which I'm 40 years old, and I really don't, been around the block and then went around again just for laughs. It's like, nothing really touches my soul. When I get a book that touches my soul, now I'm like, okay, now I'm a fountain. I want to talk, which is what led to the next.
Because I get an email from him, and it's just like a one-line email, and he said, call me. Save your number. And so I call him again, and basically we're like, can we do an interview part 2? Is what you asked for. So we
Yes,
sit
I
down.
did.
We sit down again, and this is how I remember it, is that you said there had been another time in your life where someone got so close to you it felt like they poked you in the eye.
Yes.
And that freaked you out so much that you didn't talk to them again, right?
Right.
Because you're like, it felt uncomfortable how much that it seemed like we kind of had this connection and saw some things. And so you're like, just, I don't do this, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And I'm thinking, well, why'd you call me?
Shall I?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, because of that incident, lack of maturity made me realize being a hip-hopper the way I am, and like I told everyone here before, hip-hop saved my life. Well, it did. But the one thing hip-hop didn't teach me was maturity, because hip-hop is testosterone-filled, ego-filled, ego-driven, I'm the best, and that's the way hip-hop always, you're never going to grow from it. You can evolve, but you're never going to grow from it. So I realized that, but so I kind of got out of my own egotistical self and my own afraid self, my own fear, and I said, instead of me running from someone that touches my soul, why don't I go to it and see what happens if I play it out? Which is what I did with Kimberly, and I decided I'm just going to take a deep breath, have this other interview, and this interview was going to be even like we were talking about levels before. The first interview was level 5. I wanted this interview to be level 25. And in the next interview to be level 1500. Yeah, from 25 to 1500, that's right. And in the next interview to be totally just infinite, unlimited.
Which is interview 4, which is this now. So you all get the infinite interview.
Exactly. So that interview, that's the reason why I got a hold of her, because I said, you know, if I don't talk about the book that you told me to read, that you got me to read, and the fact that you poked my soul, I said, I will be shortchanging myself and evolving as a man. So even though I'm 40 years old, I'm still growing. We're all still growing. So, and in hip hop, that's one of the things I keep trying to tell these youngsters, like, you know, your lyrics, your things that you do actually helps other people grow. It doesn't mature them, but it helps them see things in a different light. It introduces them to different cultures and different other things. So you have to have somewhat of a mature attitude when you do hip hop. You got to. But some people just like, I just want to smoke and drink and, you know, party, and that's fine and everything. But, you know, pretty soon, you know, the party's over. Then what you going to do? So that's where, you know, I decided, well, the party's over. I need to talk to Kimberly, and whatever she asks me, I'm going to answer. Yeah, boy, that was quite an interview.
Yeah.
Wow. You want to,
No, I feel like
that interview.
There's just been like an honesty and one thing that's been surprising, I think both of us, but I can definitely speak for myself, is that for all intents and purposes, what are we doing having a conversation? I mean, like, where you grew up, where I grew up, like my framework, where I'm coming from, where you're coming from.
Right.
And I think what's been great is both of us have been really honest.
Ex-gangbanger cheerleader. I mean, who would ever thought it, you know?
And I think what's surprising me is with our backgrounds that are so different, what connecting points we're finding. And in that conversation, one of the connecting points that we found is we didn't even have to go deep into details or what it was, but I had recently been like working through some junk like in my life and realizing that if I didn't address my wounds, then it was limiting me for what I could offer people as a pastor. That these were blocks. And so as I was going through this hard journey that in some ways I've been running from for so long in my life and turning around and kind of facing those demons, there was a rawness there. And
oh yeah, I remember that. And I was explaining to you how I learned how to take a negative situation and draw energy from it and make it positive. Hence my name. Even with my name is DJ Mark Luv, M-A-R-K-L-U-V. The L-U-V means living under violence, turning it into love. You take negativity and you draw positive strength from that negativity. No matter what anyone says, there's always positive wherever. There's positivity all around us. We just have to find it. And that's the one thing a lot of people don't realize is that even though, like, well, I don't like to say this brother's name a lot, but like Snoop Dogg and all them, a lot of times they do stuff for money and this, that, and the other. But when they first started doing rap, hip-hop, when they first started rapping, that was their way of finding some kind of positive. Even though the lyrics were negative, they were trying to draw strength from the negativity that they lived in and try to tell other people about it. This is what's going on here. This is what I grew up around. This is what I experienced. And I'm not telling people to indulge in it. I'm not telling people not to indulge. You're your own person. But this is how I'm coping with it. And a lot of people miss the mark because they look at it because, well, other entities, which I won't get into, other entities get in and start exploiting it and using it as a formula and selling it and marketing it. But when you go to the actual individual, the rapper, they're doing it as a release. And I learned how to take a negative situation and draw any kind of positive, no matter how small it is, just draw from it and make it my own and make it bigger.
And in this conversation of talking about wounds and coping mechanisms and stuff, I think we really found some connecting points and some camaraderie in this.
Yeah, we did.
And what's one of the things that struck me in the conversation is that you said, you know, in some ways, some of the choices that I've been making, I thought that I was choosing against some things, and maybe I was just furthering or deepening wounds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you seemed very open to like, let's journey together. Let's figure out other ways other than the ones that keep on insanity.
Well, that's where it all came to a moment that I loved, because it was that realization for me that right now, you and me, coming from two different territories, two different worlds, now we're together going through uncharted territory.
Yeah.
That is like the making of so much magic. You know, that's when you can truly understand a person, or how in my organization, I like to say, overstand a person, where you know him so well you get over it. It's like, you know, it's like I got to the point where I'm like, well, you know what, we have this in common so much now. Now, when something faces, you can actually pick up the phone and call the most unlikeliest person in the world and say, hey, Mark, this is what I'm experiencing. And I'm going, I understand that. I get that. Matter of fact, I went through something similar, but on a different scale. And that's actually bringing closer together. It's unity.
And from that, I think what's interesting is we're both bringing each other into each other's worlds. I mean, just the fact that Mark is here, like I have spent 6 months now weekly visiting the Scratch Academy and going to that school. To have Mark here in the seminary
Even
classroom,
Hopper wouldn't come here. I'm just kidding.
To have Mark here in the seminary classroom, the will that he's willing to like come out here, it like speaks so much to me. Do you want to?
Thank you.
Do you want to? We had this interesting conversation last night. Do you want to tell them a little bit about what it was like for you to have me come to the Hideo event?
Oh, wow. Okay. I gotta take my glasses off for this one. There is this event that was thrown for a DJ friend of ours, a DJ friend of mine, and all the community, who contracted colon cancer, and it metastasized to his liver. He doesn't have too long, and they threw a benefit for him, and we were all there, and all the DJs, all kind of DJs. I mean, there were radio DJs, there were street DJs like myself, there were hip hoppers, and there were gangster hip hoppers, and I'll explain that later. But they were all there. But the problem was, the people that threw the event turned it into a promotional thing for all these new up and coming rappers that had nothing to do with the reason why everybody was there. So all the vilest, crudest, horriblest rappers ever were on stage spitting stuff that not even a DJ would play. If they paid us to, we wouldn't play it. And we're sitting here and we're like, oh man. So I'm standing over here, I'm like, okay, well, I have my friends here. So, and I gotta tell who so I'm standing over here and I'm talking to a guy who produced an album. And this is gonna this wows me every time I say it out loud. He produced an album called the Blood and Crip Rap Album. And basically on one side was the Bloods rapping, and on the other side was Crips rapping. And he went platinum from that. And he's standing over there talking to me, hey, Mark, so and I'm talking to him, hey, his name is Battlecat. Hey, Kev, Kevin, hey, Battlecat, what's going on? And then next to him was my cousin, who is in this rap group, a pretty well-known LA rap group called Above the Law, but his nickname is Cold 187. I think we all know what that means. So he's like, yeah, Mark, and I'm talking to him, and I'm talking to the Blood and Crip guy, and then over here is my best friend, His name is Vicious Lee, and he's Tupac's DJ. I can't even begin to tell you the stories he would have. If he came in here, just looking at him, you just go, I'm going over here. I'm walking over here. But I mean, I'm standing with these three guys, and they're talking loud and saying all these curse words and talking about this one here and this, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm talking to him, yeah, man, whatever. And I turn around, and here's Kimberly. I'm going, what the? Hey, Kimberly, hey. And they stop talking and look at me like, well, I'm like, hold on a second, guys, be right back. Kimberly, and I told her I was gonna hug her, and I was gonna say, go to the other side of the room. But I hugged her, and I was like, and I actually asked, what are you doing here? And I realized, wait a minute, you're here because, okay. But I'm like, I still was kind of like, what are you doing here next to these really hardcore cats? And then it hit me, oh God, did you hear what we were talking about? Did you hear what I was saying? And I actually felt a little ashamed. But then I felt really good because I was like, wait a minute. Kimberly took it out of herself to come to an outside event away from Scratch Academy. That was big for me because knowing who she is and everything and what she does. I mean, how many people would actually take the time and say, I'm going to this thing over here that could be really ghetto and really just horrible and just, oh, it's just terrible. But I'm going because I'm willing to look at the hip hop side of it. And that really made me go, okay, you know what? That you get a gold star for that because not too many people would take that time to do that. So that's where I was like, well, Mark, will you come? Sure, no problem. I mean, you went to my world, and I didn't even invite you. Sure, why not? Sure, you invited me. Wow, that's more than I did for you. I mean, you just popped up, hey. You know, we're all sitting up there thugging out, and you're like, hey, Mark. And I'm going, okay, everybody, thug light off. Hey, yeah, there was a little switch. I had to, okay, click. Hey, Kimberly, hi. So yeah, that was it. I'm sorry.
And now he's here.
And now I'm here.
And I'll just stand over there.
Just stand over there.
And so, I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring Mark to class today is because we are talking about culture and entering into cultures and what it means. And this is like new and exciting. And I mean, going from like not even a year ago having bought my first CD to like going to the DJ Hideo event or going to different events, like there's a newness, and I think we're sharing each other's eyes. That's what I experienced when I did that paper with Karina, is that in a way when I was in seminary, I was studying the Bible so much I almost couldn't see it anymore. And so I needed to pass it to someone who had fresh eyes for her to say, I was like, what does this say? And she's like, oh, it says this. And I was like, wow. You know, and she was doing the same thing for music. You know, I was like, oh, well, I hear this and something so familiar. And I think that's where the energy has been coming from, is that it hasn't been me coming to your world, but you have nothing to teach me about anything. And it hasn't been like, I'm coming to your world with a point or a purpose or to make you into anything other than who you are. But the conversation has been like kind of sharing each other's eyes and being able to look at the things that are familiar to us because someone who didn't grow up in the scene or is in a different place is being able to speak. And there are these connection points.
Well, like hip hop likes to call them, I realized that you wasn't a culture vulture. Pretty much, there are people that come into the hip hop culture and they exploit all the elements of hip hop, the rapping, the graffiti, the dance, the DJ, and they exploit it for their own, purpose, which is of course money. And I mean, there are different ways that people have seen it and think that, oh well, this is something that the hip hop community really goes for, when actually no, the hip hop community shuns it. Like there's even certain movies that are out there that were just done just to make money, but when younger people look at them and go, oh man, that's hip hop, when actually when the movie was getting made, hip hop shunned it. No, there's no real hip hop involved in this. These people are trying to make money off of us. So we turned our back on it. But they went ahead and made the movie. And now 20 years later, the younger cats are looking at it as a blueprint on hip hop, which is what the older cats did not want. So, you know, pretty much that, you know, I was really, well, old schoolers like myself, I really don't like to call myself an old schooler because I know 60-year-old hip hoppers, but I won't get into that. But old schoolers look at it like, hey, you know, if somebody like Kimberly was to come around and ask a lot of questions without really trying to understand what she's getting to, like when her being at the Hideo thing was big, because that was her, not even being asked, that was her trying to see what's going on. And that's like, you know, that's like if I was a gang member and she came down to South Central and stayed for a day just to see, you know, exactly what's going on. Not to just sit down and write, but just to see what's happening. That would make her a little bit, okay, you know what, she's not a culture voter. She's not running back to her posh, you know, mansion or house or whatever to write about, oh, I was, you know, down in the ghetto with the little ghettoites and, you know, da-da-da-da, and then make a nice book and then put it out there and then have a premiere at a bookstore that I can't go to because I'm not in that neighborhood. You know, it's like, you know, that's the one difference. And hip-hop is, we hate culture vultures. We cannot stand people that do that. So what we try to do, we try to take full advantage of. Complete full advantage, which is really sad because that's when it goes into racial stereotyping. Because then you have the hip-hopper who sees a, in my organization we don't like to say black or white because those are colors, those are not human beings. But when you see a European or Nubian come in, you see a European, oh, that's a white guy, he's got money, I'm gonna use him. But the same thing, you're stereotyping. You know, this guy might be the best b-boy in here, he might be the best DJ in here, but automatically he's stereotyped as someone with money and someone that they can exploit. And that's what happens with a lot of hip hop, and that's why there's a separation right now. There's a big, big separation because of that. You know, and what she did actually, one little thing she did actually was one of the things that can help bridge that gap and help, you know, bring unity. Which is why, you know, I really want to tell her about hip hop because I want her to surprise every urban hip hop person I know. Because I want him to walk up to her and thinking that they're hard and they got their, you know, gold teeth in their mouth and they was like, yeah, you know, so you know what I'm saying, Kim? You know what I'm saying, Kay? And, you know, I've been doing this hip hop for a good 6 months. And, and I know hip hop all the way. You know, I was hanging out with Lil Wayne, and I was hanging out with Lil Jon, and hanging out with everybody that's little in hip hop. So you know, from Lil Kim on down. So you know, it's like, yo, I know hip hop, and I want you to be able to say, really, okay, great. So do you know about Africa Bambaataa? Do you know about Kool Herc? Do you know about Snoop Dogg? Do you know about da 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 da? They're like, how do you know about that? You don't look like someone that knows about it. There's the rub. You don't have to look like anything to be a hip-hopper. You know what I'm saying? You could be, you know, you could wear a business suit, you could wear a sundress, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter what color you are, it doesn't matter. You could just know the history and be content. But, you know, that's the one thing that speaking about my organization, we've always been striving for the past 36 years.
A little bit about the Zulu Nation?
Zulu Nation, Universal Zulu Nation, was started in 1973 by a man named Africa Bambaataa. I don't know if anybody in here really are into hip hop like that, but he came out with a song called Planet Rock years ago. And this man had an organization, he wanted to start an organization that wanted to break stereotypes and use hip hop as a tool to cause unity within the community. Make the young people, instead of hurting each other in the gangs and stuff, make them come together and help the community, help the older people in the community, help the younger people make something of themselves, have a voice that's heard, whether getting on the mic or getting on the b-boy tip or spray painting. So it take all that negative energy from fighting and doing violence and doing something creative with it, and using hip hop as that tool to better yourself as a human being. That's what Zulu Nation's always been about since 1973. I joined Zulu Nation in 1992, and I've been in Zulu Nation ever since. And with Zulu, there's certain things that I've learned, and one of the things I learned is, you know, it doesn't matter who you are, anybody can be a part of hip hop. The problem is, certain people that think they are hip hop will tell you, you can't be a hip hopper unless they say so. You can't be a hip hopper unless you look this way. You can't be a hip hopper unless you talk this way. That's BS. Because plain and simple, if you know hip hop comes from here. It always comes from the heart, all right? It comes from the emotional, it comes from the passion, and then your brain processes that information. And it rationalizes what's good and what's bad. This is what I like, this is what I don't like. And if you like Tribe Called Quest, but don't like Snoop Dogg, if you like Snoop Dogg but don't like Tribe Called Quest, it's your prerogative, it's your decision. But this whole thing about, you know, barriers, that's what the Zulu Nation has been trying to destroy for years. It's a very hard fight. You know, I got gray hairs, you know, back hurts, bunions. It's like, you know, it's a hard fight because, you know, the different generations every so often, you know, different generations of young people that learn things in a different way. And now one of the hardest, well, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. The internet, boy, I tell you, because anybody can go on the internet and say they're the, and I use this word loosely, they're the prophet of hip hop. I know everything about hip hop, hip hop, hip hop, hip hop. And somebody will say, yeah, you know, I'm gonna listen to this guy. But if you actually go and look at this guy and check his background, he's only been doing hip hop since 1997. Which seems like a long time, but hip hop was created in 1974. So what happened to all of that before 1997? And, you know, can someone care? You know, I mean, like what they do with jazz and like what they do with, you know, country and rock. You know, people care about the Beatles and Elvis and stuff. But when you look at Kool Herc, the father of hip hop, you look at Afrika Bambaataa, Treacherous 3, Cold Crush Brothers. When you come to the West Coast, you look at Egyptian Lover, you look at Arabian Prince, you look at all of these people. These people have done hip hop and done good music, stuff I grew up on, and they get thrown to the side. And that's one of the real big problems that Zulu Nation has been facing. That's what my organization pretty much is about. We're pretty much about that.
You know, the way that Mark is talking about, like, the history and how you need to know who came before you and where it came from was one of the first things that struck me when I sat in a DJ 101 class, because that was the first thing that they went over. Is they're like, before you even touch the turntables, we want to explain to you a little bit about where hip hop came from, and they do a little talk on that. And again, thinking from the like pastor / you know, DJ connection, one of the things I was thinking of is I can only imagine that the church history classes here, if we had that same like, you know, insistency on like sharing and knowing where we came from and who's, you know, who we're standing on and like learning that. And so there's been times where I've even sat in and they're just, you know, Mark is talking about hip hop. It's clear he's talking about hip hop. He's talking about his history, but it's challenging me to know my own history, you know, to know the church history and to be able to have that same, to be able to talk that confidently about where I'm coming from.
One of the things I've learned from a lot of young people, especially in hip hop, they hate religion. They can't stand it. And simply because they feel it's forced upon them, they feel it's too much to learn, they feel, oh man, I don't, New Testament, Old Testament. But it's really funny because if you look at it in another sense, when it comes down to hip hop, in order for you to know what hip hop is, you gotta know who came before you. And you gotta have an influence. Who influenced you in hip hop? Oh, Afrika Bambaataa influenced me as a DJ. Okay, well he was around in 1973 and before that. Well, who influenced you on this end when it comes down to religion? Well, you can have a lot more influences, but people don't look at it like that, especially the kids. They don't look at it like that. They look at it as something that they're forced to do. And they look at hip hop as being, oh, so free-spirited and fun, I can do whatever I want. But there's so many rules and restrictions to religion. But then when they get into hip hop, they do exactly what I just told you. You can't be in hip hop because you can't be in hip hop because they do the exact same thing. So it's like they don't realize they're doing it. And that's where one of the things I picked up on, like, you know, one of the common factors is like, I think I even mentioned that I was in that DJ movie, and I was in a scene where I was talking about when DJs start really, everything starts working for a DJ. He's from a crowd full of people. There's a moment where he gets this sensation, like everything's working for me. I'm in the zone right now, and we cannot describe it. And there's DJs from the East Coast to the West Coast to international waters that are saying the same thing I'm saying. Like, yeah, I don't know what you call it, but when everything's working for you, you get into the zone. You get into this big, oops, sorry about the mic, but you get into this zone where it's like, where is it? Right here. You get into a zone, and it's like, well, it's kind of like that when, actually, I don't know if it was you that did it, but somebody told me, like, well, Mark, it reminds me of the whole thing with it was kind of like the whole thing when they were saying, like, when my grandmother and certain people used to say when they get the Spirit, the Holy Spirit just enters them. They can't describe it. It's just, everything is going good. The pastor's saying da-da-da-da, the brothers up there saying da-da-da-da, and everything's just, and I feel it. And the same thing happens with hip-hop, because I'm not going to lie to you. I've seen b-boys get that much crazier, spinning on their heads and spinning on their back, and I go, what's wrong with you, dude? He's like, bruh, Mark, I don't know what it is, but you played this song, and I got filled with something. What is it? I can't tell you. I don't know what it was. Graph artist. Yo, dude, what made you, I was out here one night doing something illegal, of course. I was out here one night defacing his property, and something just overwhelmed me to paint this. And it wasn't me holding the can, it was something else just flowing. And I asked them, what is it? And they go, I don't know. And that's all I don't know. Same thing with DJing. I could be cutting and scratching and playing music, and everyone's like, Mark Luv, yay! My ego's getting bigger and bigger. And I'm sitting there like, yeah! And then I start cutting and scratching a little more, and I play this song, Every song I'm playing, everyone's like, oh, yelling and screaming. And then someone comes up and says, Mark, you killed it. What got into you? I don't know. It's just, something filled me with just, it was just otherworldly.
And I think what we're finding here is that as I explained kind of coming into this, I was very clear how much I'm not hip hop. That there's really not much about me that can claim like I'm down like that.
Yeah.
I can say it, you can't. Yeah, you can. But and you've shared with me before how much religion has hurt you and how much you've distanced yourself from that community and have said, really, I don't think there's anything that I do that connects with that. And what we're finding is that there are these correlations, like just me being me and him being him, we're watching each other and we're listening to one another, and we're finding that there are ways that we've found to explain it using our own framework that connects with the other person as well. Like Mark's describing kind of this zone. I felt that zone. That nudge that I felt to get that book, like he's felt those nudges to picking up a record. You know? Like there are these things that we're finding with one another that
But I'll be the first to tell you, I'm somebody, and a matter of fact, I said this to Kimberly earlier, and I can't believe I'm exposing this right now, but I'm somebody who, I have a block when it comes to religion because of my past, my colorful past, which I won't really go into, but my colorful past with religion. So it developed a spiritual block. Pretty much I'm like, I don't trust religion. I don't want to be around religion. I don't want to forget it. But I talked to her, and she started making me see the things that things have in common. And I realized at that point, also after reading the book too, I realized one thing. No matter how much I may say I have a spiritual block, my spirituality ain't blocked because of the fact that the spirit can't be blocked. It's your spirit. It's you. So all it is I put it, well, my spirit is asleep right now. It hasn't been awakened. But she's slowly rousing it, you know, like, wake up, wake up. So she's showing me some things that actually made perfect sense, putting, you know, 2 and 2 together and not getting 15 all the time, actually getting 4. And I'm like, whoa, you know, yeah, you know, when I get into this mood, it's kind of like being filled with and I didn't want to say it. I was like, I don't want to say it. That's not true. But I couldn't run from it because every element of hip-hop has went through it. And all the while they say, I don't know, I'm in the back of my mind going, something like the Holy Spirit or something. Fine. So, you know, even though I kept running from it, you know, I'm a big guy, I don't run too fast. So looking at it in that sense, I finally have started to slow down and go, you know, I think I'm an intelligent person. I know right from wrong. I know, you know, what's up and what's down. And looking at, I can't run away from this logic. I'm a logical person. I love logic more than I love belief. And logically, her put all this, gave me all this kind of confusion. You kind of confused me at first because I was like, you know, I call it confusion, but it really wasn't confusion. I was me trying to run away again. But, you know, it wasn't that I was angry. I was just confused. And then I tried to brush it off. But that book was I don't know what it did, but it shook something. And that caused me to be here today. Honestly, if she would have asked me this a month ago, no, before we had the first talk, I wouldn't be here because I would go, oh, no. My spirituality says no.
Didn't you say when you first heard that I had anything to do with pastor? You were like,
Yeah, I didn't want to talk to you because I knew we were going to get into a war of words. First thing I went at it negative. The first thing I did was go negative. Oh no, we're going to debate. No, because I'm so anti-religion. I'm so, no, it ain't going to work. And when we talked, I was like, I even wondered, like, are you sure are you sure? Because you don't seem like the average. But, you know, the one thing, too, is, you know, something that she pointed out just over here in the cafeteria, there's good and bad in everything, but it's the way sometimes people portray it. So, you know, when you have a lifetime of people telling you something's good, force-feeding it down your throat, and then you see the bad in it, you focus on the bad because you've always been force-fed the good. Well, I had an experience when I went to Rome about that. I went to Rome, and I've always been force-fed the good in Catholicism. Always been force-fed the good, and I ran into these young people who were doing a tour, and they were showing the bad side. Well, oh, the Romans stole this, and the Romans stole that, and Michelangelo hated them, and the reason why he's, you know, painted Judgment Day. And so what did I do? I focused on the bad. I was like, man, those Catholics, and I stormed out. But, you know, she kind of told me, you know, that's really not the way to look. You got to balance yourself. And
well, what I was saying is that when you look at hip-hop, there are elements of hip-hop that you don't want to associate yourself with.
Exactly.
And then there's the elements that you feel proud to be a part of. And as a Christian, I can say the same thing. I'm a Christian for better or for worse, but there's elements that I don't want to associate with myself. But it's like the fruits and the giants. That's what we were just talking about.
Yes, yeah.
Is how there are both. There are things that I want to share with Mark because I am so excited about the freedom that I found or the healing that I found. And at the same time, everything he sees, I can't deny that either. I don't want to like pull wool over his eyes and be like, no, that's not me or that's not us. It is.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to wrap up one question, ask you one more question, and then I'll open it up for you guys to, if there's any questions that you have. My question to you is, where do you see this conversation going between us? I mean,
ending in a few.
What I mean is that when I first talked to Hapa and I said I came in, I knew what I wanted to learn from the DJs, but it surprised me what we had to offer that community too as Christians. You've mentioned to me at times on the phone, like, man, you will have resistance.
Yes, I did.
You will have resistance to some people in your community, but that there's something that could be offered. What do you think that is?
You'll have resistance because you're saying the big R word. And young people look at hip hop as rebellion, where you're coming in with the R word of religion. So it's like when you try to put the two together, it's going to be a trial. But once in a while, every now and then, you'll catch a couple of people with the maturity enough to understand what you're doing, and then try to build a bridge over that gap. And where I see this conversation going, well, ultimately between me and you, friendship, a very odd, unique friendship. Benny, because, the funny thing is when you told me today about the cheerleader, I said, well, there it is right there. I mean, I got to play that up somewhere. Like, yeah, Mark Luv, he used to, back in the day, he used to be a gangbang. Yeah, really, we used to be a gangbang. She used to be a cheerleader. So, it was like I was going pop-pop, she was going pom-poms, Don't hit me. But I mean, that to me is a very unique friendship where you wouldn't ever think about having a friend like. I'm interested to see how it looks when I come to some of your parties and stuff. I walk in and they're like, what the? Mark, hey, this is Mark, and you're like, okay, and you come to my parties and they're like, Mark, I'm like, hey, that's K. That's K, that's Kim. But I think society, especially hip hop, I think we need to see more of that to show that, there isn't a separation. And you're gonna find people like I ain't gonna say like me because that sounds arrogant. You're gonna find people like that in hip hop that's gonna, like even your hoppas, that's gonna be like, well, you know what? That's very interesting and I want to challenge that. Because that's what it is to me, it's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great challenge.
I agree.
I think it's a great I love challenges. But you're going to run into the youngsters that hate challenges and they get on their computer and play their Halo.
Well, I just want to thank Mark for coming out. I mean, this means so much to me, and
I want to thank you for making me, for giving me the challenge to, for giving me this challenge, because I think it's making me, it's evolving. Once again, it's making me a better man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Good deal. So thanks. Do any of you have any questions for Mark, for me, about conversation, about hip hop, about Zulu Nation? Here's a wealth of wisdom.
I want to know, what's the status of the underground hip hop right now in LA, and how's it growing or dying or thriving?
Well, it's, the sad thing is the recession. I hate saying that word. But the recession is kicking everybody in the booty, so looking at it on that realm, the underground hip hop is still surviving, but believe it or not, it's actually gotten more underground. To where it's like the most unlikeliest places is having little hip hop jams, with 25, 30 people. Like I said a long time ago, it's gonna get to the point where hip hop gets so excluded by commercial radio and everything. There's gonna be the old guys around the fire, around the garbage can on fire, with a hip hop, I hip it to the hip, keep it warm. And I said it's gonna get to that point, and it seems like it's getting close to there, because the underground scene is still active and still doing its thing. It's just, it's not around as much now. Now you have where you had like maybe every week, it turned to every other week, which turned to once a month. Now it's like once every other month. It's hitting hard. It's really getting hit hard.
Mark, I got a funny question. There are contemporary Christian rap artists.
Yes.
Which I don't know if they consider themselves hip-hoppy or contextual, contemporary Christian.
Mm-hmm.
But do you ever see rap, maybe now that you guys have this little friendship going here, that maybe one day, years down the road, that there might be this kind of new insurgence of maybe kind of a, I don't want to say theological, but more of a presence maybe?
It's funny that you say that because there's actually some underground hip-hop cats out there that's doing Christian hip-hop, but they're doing it like really, it is really phenomenal. But as soon as the kids buy the record, they take it back to the store. Well, there ain't really no stores left, but they take it back and they go, I can't mess with them. Like one group, I'll give you a good example from Denver, Colorado, one group called the Percussions. Mm-hmm. And there's another guy by the name of Flint. He used to be in this group called LA Symphony. Mm-hmm. These guys do Christian hip hop. And they do good Christian hip hop. You can't tell it from other hip hop. It's like, oh man, that beat is slamming, Yoda cuts is really dope. And they're talking about their experiences, and they're talking about Christ. And I'm like, wow. But the problem is that closed-mindedness. Now, what's going to happen with something like this, if I take her to meet them, then they're not going to feel so bad, number one. Mm-hmm. They're going to feel like they have allies, number two. And they're going to look at it like, well, Mark Luv has always been an ally on our hip-hop front. Now he's coming on this front. Maybe we can get maybe we can come to young people in a different light, or maybe we can come in the young Christians, who knows? But now it's going to be, maybe it can cause a resurgence with them. Because they're really too good not to be selling or to be cared about, like what's happening right now. Hip-hop community is not caring about them. They're writing them off. And so I've always said, if one community don't like you, go at another one. Right. And that's always the way I've been, And I think they need to find another community, and maybe, just maybe, this can open some doors for them. If that didn't sound too arrogant. Like, I got their power in our hands. It's not like that.
I'm interested in the connection you guys have made together, and the commonality that you found, and the community that you see, springing forth from that as you journey together through your own woundedness. And so, without getting into too much detail, my question is, the woundedness that you both have now and that are journeying through together, like you said, the community, you can call them up and be like, hey, I'm going through this, Is it similar in the same, like without getting into too much detail, is it similar in the experiences, or is it metaphorically kind of, similar in that you can draw from each other strength out of the negative, just in because you're both being open about your woundedness and journeying together. Does that make sense?
You want to answer that one?
Yeah. I would say when I was in this really dark season in my life, and I was trying to reach out and connect with different people, it surprised me at times who I could connect with and who I didn't. It wasn't always who I assumed. There's people who I thought, oh, they're going to be really compassionate and they're going to get me, and it just seemed like falling on deaf ears, And then there was other people who just, you don't have to go into all the nitty-gritty details, but they just got it before you even had to say it. In fact, I remember having a conversation with a professor who, it seemed like he knew way more about what I was going through than I did. And the way that he was talking about it, I felt, my guard was let down and I felt comfortable. And I found, that's I think the connection that I found with Mark, is that you just take two people who have been through some stuff and you have a different conversation than you would have with folks who haven't. Most
definitely. I know the stuff I go through, she has not even, we're on totally different planes. But the similarities between I'm gonna say similarity, the timing. The timing was just crazy. It's like I'm going through something and I had never spoken to her about it at all. But she hands me this book about a man on a journey trying to find something that he already had. And that was one of my biggest problems. Because I felt like I was looking for something, but I didn't realize it was right in front of me. And that's what made me go, how did you know? You know, like, I never told you none of this. That touched my soul. So the second conversation, I opened up more, and sure enough, I hit on something that sparked her. Like, whoa, yo, he said exactly what I needed to hear at this. So it was pretty much, the more we got to know each other, or the more we opened up to each other, the more we realized, whoa, I mean, you're going through something that I didn't even know you were going through. It's just, I didn't have to, she didn't have to say nothing to me. I got it. I didn't have to say nothing to her, she got it. We didn't have to say a word. That was a mental connection. And I will always say that. That was a connection I can't put to words. You know, that's like the 27th alphabet, the 27th letter to me.
Yeah. More questions? Good. Well, Mark might hang around for a little bit too, just to.
I just want to make a comment. I think what strikes me, and I think, well, there's a lot we can learn from this, but I think one of the things that strikes me and why it really, the relationship really connected to is this capacity just to be authentic with who I am right now versus trying to be something. Like Kim's not trying to be anything. No, she's not. She's just being the cheerleader, the former cheerleader. And if I'm a middle-aged European American, I'm a middle-aged European American. And one thing I've learned is that's who I am. That's the basis on which I relate with people. And what I see is you are who you are. Kim is who, and then you should find the connection. And it's that authenticity in the relationship, I think, that.
Mm-hmm. And you hit it. Wow, boy, did you hit it right on the nail. I hate people who try to be like me, because I don't try to be like them. It's like I'm always me. And when you're always you, you're giving me a blueprint to get to know you. But if you're trying to be me, I'm already me, so why do you want to know me again? So pretty much, it's like, you know, when she came at me, and the realest thing a person ever could have said was, I just bought my first CD. You say that to a 28-year veteran DJ. I just bought my first CD a few weeks ago. And I'm like, wow, you can't get no more realer than that. We're going to be great friends. So, I mean, you know, but she was never, Kimberly has never been no one but herself. And it makes me able to choose, do I want to know that person? Or do I don't want to know that person? It's not like, well, she's trying to be like me, so I got to get to know her because she's, you know, trying to fit in, or vice versa. It's nothing like that. It's real with us. Like, she'll say something. I'm just gonna love our disagreements because we're coming from these two different angles. Like, you know, even with we was talking about earlier, I'm someone who likes to talk slow and get my point across. I'm very detailed in what I like to say, while Kimberly talks like 250,000 miles an hour. So when we have a conversation sometimes, I'm in
Then what I do is
I'm trying to say something else.
So then when I that reminds me of
and we're doing this back and forth, and in my head I'm going, okay, Mark, do you want to compromise or do you want to just walk away? But with her, I'll compromise, which is something that I don't normally do to people. But I compromise because I know that what she's saying is worth my time, and what I'm saying is worth her time. We're not invading each other's space and wasting time. We actually got something valuable to say to each other, and we actually listen to each other, even though we actually listen to each other, and it's a great, unique friendship that's chiseling out.
And the reason we want to listen to each other is Mark is bringing a perspective that no one else in my world is offering me. And and I think I'm offering.
There is nobody in my world that's bringing a perspective like this. This is the most unique. I needed this perspective. I needed it so bad. You know, like I said, hip hop is very testosterone driven, even with the females. But that's something to think about. But you know, it's very testosterone driven. So every answer I get is like, you know, man up, man up, man up. Where it's like I can talk to her and she would just say, talk, let it flow, say what you got to say, get it out. Wow, you know that you don't get that. And then she gives me a perspective that I really need because she gives me kind of a spiritual perspective. Not the fact that you're coming at me with religion, but you're basically using my logic to make sense of the spiritual talk that we're doing. And that's what I need. I need that. So, you know, since me being a logical person, you use my logic against me. I'll get even with you. But yeah, so it's a nice perspective. It's a good perspective.
Yeah. Well, again, I want to thank Mark for coming out and just for all of you guys for listening. So thanks so much.
I want to thank y'all for having me. Yeah.